Louisiana football. Coach, just overall, last season, double digits, but some losses at the end of the year, conference, and then in the bowl game. Uh, just overall impressions of that year, what you could take from it, and as you transition into 2025.
Well, I think last year there were a lot of things that we talked about that we needed to do better. The 23 season, we were really close. We dropped a bunch of one possession games, and we talked about things we had to do to win those. And, last year I thought our team did a really good job of kind of pushing through that middle eight in that third quarter and extending the lead in the fourth and not leaving it up to one possession games. I was really proud of the team and the way they worked to get there. Certainly the way it ended, in the two losses and really bad losses at the end of the year, kind of put a stain on what last year was. But, I think what that does is that kind of fuels the fire a little bit going into the next year. And that's what we've talked about as much as anything is, that's the type of stuff that just makes you relentless in your pursuit. Those when you get that close, um, those things are things that just kind of keep you pushing and keep you motivated because, for us, yeah, it was good to get back to 10 wins and all that stuff, but 10 wins is not a goal for us. It's to win a conference championship, and we came up short. So at the end of the day, it means there's more work to do, and the thing that's been fun is to watch this team embrace that. And embrace that mindset and see the leadership on this team, like these two guys, kind of just push that day in and day out.
Yeah, and then offensively, you're breaking a new quarterback as Walker Howard as we're recording. But just what about that and bringing a new quarterback into the system and trying to acclimate him, if it's him or maybe someone else,
Sure.
into the program and into the starting rotation.
Well, the thing we've been fortunate the last 3 years. We had two quarterbacks that were well entrenched in the system. I mean, they knew it, understood it. Um, Bringing Walker in was really a good thing, I think, for our team for a couple of reasons. A local kid that we had a really good relationship with, watched him play. He played for my dad in middle school, so I've been knowing the kid forever. Watched him play for a long time. And, in that quarterback room, we have a couple other kids in there that are really talented. They're just young, and so it brings a little bit more of a veteran presence in there, somewhat. Someone he's been in quarterback battles his entire career. I mean, he played behind two first-round draft picks. I mean, he's seen it at a really high level. And, I think it adds another dimension to that room that makes the room better. And, for us, the big thing that I talk to all of our guys who come in, we don't take a bunch of transfers, but when they get there is, look, you know, we do things a certain type of way, and we're asking you to jump in. You wanted to change. That's why you came here. Buy into it wholesale, and those guys have done that. They've been a really good fit for us, Walker and all the other transfers that we took. And a lot of that is because I think these older guys, these veterans, they've been really welcoming and really overextended themselves to like, hey, like this is how we do things. This is what's expected, and those guys have bought into it. And so it's been fun to put this team together since January. And Walker's been a really good addition for us in a lot of different ways. But he's been a great fit for us more than anything.
You return to preseason all-conference offensive linemen, including Jack Sarrington. How beneficial is that to at least have some veterans returning on the offensive line towards your goals this year?
Well, I mean, it always starts up front, and I mean, you can have great players, offense or defense, on the back end or on the outside. If you don't play well up front, it doesn't matter. And I think 22 was probably a prime example of that. We lost a lot of really good players on the offensive line, and we just couldn't kind of get it all back in place in one year. Um, every year since then, I think we've done a really good job of having good depth there and really good players, and this year is no different. I mean, yeah, you got those two guys that are preseason all-conference that have played great for us. But I would say that offensive line, I mean, there's probably 10 guys on that offensive line that we feel we could win a conference championship with. And, we need to play those guys early on. It's a long season and you have attrition and things like that. So we got to do a really good job of, obviously getting the right five starting, but getting that 7, 8, hopefully 9 or 10 that can go in there and play a little bit every game to continue to develop them and continue to take a little bit of wear off maybe some of those other guys that have been here. We believe in playing guys that deserve to play. On defense, and a lot of times that's three deep, like on the D line and things like that. So, it's a great group we have up front with really good leadership, and we're excited. I think I think this offensive line is. I think we're going to be a lot better this year than we were last year up front. And I thought last year those guys did a hell of a job for us.
A little bit different on the defensive side. I think you're potentially have to replace maybe up replace double-digit starters from last year potentially. What about that side of the ball? How's that been? Because there's been a lot of movement there, just with graduation and other
Sure.
factors.
Well, yeah, but like I said, we have a lot of guys that played, so to us in our building, it kind of doesn't feel that way, we have moved some things around, at linebacker. Terrence Williams moved to linebacker last year, was a backup, played well as a backup. Jaden Duggar, we moved to inside backer. He's too unique, too talented to split a third of the time at outside backer, so found a way to get him on the field even more. On the back end, you got Skip coming back, obviously. We lost T. Lou, but, Cody Jackson played really good last year when Skip got hurt at the end of the year. Jalen Clark has played really good in his moments back there. We're going to get Cortland Flowers back this year, which is a huge addition for us. He was playing really well at the beginning of the year, before, he had to serve a suspension for some things that, we got all cleared up. Up front, you got Kadarius Miller coming back. You lose Mason Norsees, but, Fitzgerald West played last year, played really well. Chase Edwards played really well in the back half of last year. Maxie Baudouin is a guy who last year just kept getting better. So I know on paper maybe what it looks like. We feel really good about what we got on defense. I think in year two, I expect us to be a lot better on defense, truthfully.
Yeah, you've mentioned depth, which is a huge thing I noticed, but also you mentioned conference championship consistently. Some coaches stray away from that. It sounds like the process and game to game. We don't look at the future. You stated from the very start that is the goal. Is that just a mindset you take on? It's like, this is what we're preseason first. This is our goal, and we're gonna not run away from it, but really embrace that challenge. It sounds like that for me.
Well, you have to begin with the end in mind, and you have to know what you're working for, and you have to set your goals really high. We lean into all that. We lean into it, and we confront it head on, and we talk about what we want. And look, the goals and the expectations here are to win a conference championship, and then now that there's a playoff spot on the line, that's the next one. Like, that's what it is. So, this is a results-driven industry. I think the process takes care of the results, but I think the guys have to know what we're working for. And, to me, the goal last year was to win the conference championship. It wasn't to win the Western Division. It wasn't just to host it. We came up short, and they felt that at the end of the year. And that's driven our team throughout the entire offseason. So, I think, typically when you have high goals and high expectations, I think typically you live up to it, or you get really close to it, and you have a successful year in the long run. But I think you got to start with the end in mind, and that's what I believe anyway.
All right, Coach, thanks for joining us. Now you got a few minutes left here. Let's do some quick questions. Favorite stadium that you've coached in besides your current home in Louisiana, Lafayette?
Favorite stadium that I've coached in? You talking about in conference or just in general?
In general.
Well, I got to say, as a player, getting to play at LSU and Death Valley was pretty cool. But as a coach, I got to coach at A&M. That was a pretty cool deal. The fans are so engaged that was pretty unique.
Favorite recruit that you've signed in your career, and that could be any reason. They're lower rated, turned to a super player. Maybe it's a funny story how you got them. Who has been a favorite recruit of yours?
Well, I can't say favorite. I got too many favorites. I would say the most unique is probably Mason Norsees, who just finished with us last year. I recruited him out of St. Charles Catholic in Laplace, and I've been knowing Mason since he's a freshman. Coach Monica had been telling me about this kid, so, man, I'm recruiting him. I'm all in on it. I'm assistant coach at the time, and he's like, Coach, I'm getting close. I'm getting close. Well, he goes up to La Tech to go do an unofficial visit. He calls me on the way back. Coach, I committed to La Tech. I'm like, what? Like, where'd that come from, So we go through this whole deal. We keep recruiting. Well, he decommits. So I'm like, all right. I was like, you ready to do it? He's like, well, I think I'm going to go to Tulane. I was like, what are we talking about? So I tell him all the time, like, you committed to every school in the state except for us. But we ended up getting him in the end. So it was, it ended up all right. But, yeah, So I give him grief about that all the time. But yeah, that's probably the most interesting story.
Best high school recruit that you've seen, just assistant or currently, or we're at Louisiana,
Man,
or maybe a top one or two.
one of the best high school, like probably high school performances and high school most productive high school players that I've ever recruited was probably Braylon Tronhon. Played at Acadiana High School. Um, he played safety. He played corner. He played wide out. He played running back. He returned kicks. Um, his his body of work that he put together throughout his high school career was probably one of the most impressive that I've ever seen. Just I mean, incredibly productive in everything he did.
Pregame meal or routine that you've kind of stuck to, or that you really try to hone in on at this stage?
I'm not a real superstitious guy. I don't have a whole lot of, it's very routine. Especially being the head coach at home. When you get to the stadium after you eat, get to the stadium, we do Cajun walk. I got to go meet recruits. I guess the biggest thing is I go, I call the offensive plays for us. So um, I read through my call sheet in its entirety, probably 4 or 5 times on Saturday, just so I know where everything's at and I can find it whenever it gets close. But I don't have a whole lot of superstitions or anything like that.
One thing in college football you would change or maybe even improve on in this current landscape?
Ooh, that's tough. A lot of things I think that can be changed.
Or improved on? Maybe something that's okay, but maybe
Yeah.
misused or misinterpreted.
I wish that we could get a hold of the tampering element that's involved in it right now. I think that kids having options and being able to leave is a good thing. I don't think anybody should be stuck somewhere they're not happy. Um, my biggest complaint with it is when you have kids that are happy and they're in a good place, and you have some of this stuff behind the scenes that happens that puts doubt in their mind, and then they have to make decisions. And to be honest with you, we have to give these kids advice that could affect their life long term, and we don't have all the answers, because there's so many unknowns and all that stuff. So I wish we could get a hold of that, and I wish, truthfully, that people could just do things above board, and just do it the right way.
Two more things. You mentioned advice. Best coaching advice you've ever given to a player.
That I've ever given. I don't know if there's any good advice I've ever given. No, I mean, you can't be scared of failure. You can't fear failure. You got to go play the game. You got to be loose. I think, man, when you get to the game, the work's done. If you worked hard enough all week in practice, the game should be fun. And that's what I tell them all the time. Like, there's no fear of failure, man. Like, you've made all the plays you got to make during the week. Go cut loose. Let's go have some fun.
And lastly, best coaching advice you've ever received.
I think when Coach Napier was on his way out and I got the job, he told me, don't be scared to do it your way. He said, I know you believe in a lot of things we did. He said, but you got to do it your way, and you got to do the things you see fit for your team. And, it's something I struggled with, truthfully, the first year, because I was scared to make some of those changes, but it was really good.
All right, Coach, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.